All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. This segment is called Michael's Magic Moment. It's my opportunity to play a little snippet from one of our previous episodes, which resonated with our listeners, that I received feedback from, or I felt really had an impact on some people's lives. Hope you enjoy. This week we go back to an episode where I discussed the importance of looking at your superannuation fund and basically trying to work out if your super's performing. I talk about a few things that you should consider, a few reasons you should talk to a financial advisor, and a few things to be careful of, because we all love listening to the media, we all love talking to our friends, but it's so important to remember that each person's financial and personal circumstance is completely different. Two people might be with the same super fund, but their super could be invested completely differently. So there are certain things that you need to look at when assessing your super. And it is really important to regularly assess your super and monitor it to make sure that it's still suitable and it's still doing what it's supposed to be doing, that it's fulfilling its purpose. And a lot of this comes down to, again, talking to an advisor, calling up your super fund and asking the right questions, or even getting access online to be able to log into your super, just to get a better idea as to what it's actually doing and where it's invested and what's in there at the moment, what's going in, what's going out. Because if you don't know these things, and if you're not monitoring these things, or no one's doing it for you, it's extremely possible that there's a chance that what you set up a while ago was probably appropriate, but it may not be anymore. So as we go back to that episode, I leave you with those words to just really listen to what I'm about to explain, and feel free to listen to the full episode as well, if you feel like this is important for you and your partner. But just to really have an idea as to, just listen to it and just reflect and keep it top of mind. And don't let super be one of those things that you just ignore and decide to look at in 20 years. When comparing super funds, it's really important to always remember that past performance is not an indicator of future performance. So if you look at the fine print and most billboards that you see for super funds, there'll always be a little line that says that. Secondly, when you are comparing them, it's really important to look at the periods that you're looking at. So, for example, just because a fund has performed at, say, 12% in the last 3 years, it doesn't mean it's done that well over the last 10 or 15 years. And if you are comparing super fund performance, it is really important to look at the period that's being compared, because, as you would know, economies fluctuate and markets go up and down, and there's different, and figures can also be manipulated based on the time period that's being chosen. So when you see a billboard or you hear about someone telling you, "Oh, my super did this much," ask them what the period of that return is. The other thing as well is it's really important to understand that just because a super fund performed at X amount, it doesn't mean that everybody in that super fund had an account that performed at that same amount. Because in your superannuation, in most superannuation accounts, there are more than one investment options. Sometimes they could be, there could be 10. Sometimes some funds have about 400 or 500 investment options. So it's really important to know what investment options are being compared and what investment option that you are actually in as well. Because recently the government implemented some changes where superannuation funds that hold MySuper investment options, and just to let you know, MySuper investment options are the default investment options that would be opened up with those accounts if they come under that MySuper group, we'll call it. They recently brought out some rules where these funds now need to report their performance, and this performance needs to be compared, and there's a benchmark now that needs to be met, and if it's not met, or if there are funds that don't perform as well compared to this benchmark, they need to notify their members And there are a few rules around that. And the media loves this because they'll put something up saying, 13 of Australia's worst performing super funds, and Australians urged to check their super right now if you're with one of these funds. Which is good that the media is making people aware of these issues, don't get me wrong, but it is really important to understand the specifics, that these comparisons that you see in the media are normally just the default investment options if it's referring to my super investment options. So if you have a financial advisor, or if you've actually made changes to your superannuation account, there's a chance that you're not in these my super options at all. So that's something else to really, really be aware of. And as I said, even just when it comes to, a friend or another person you meet being with the same super fund, just because your super did well doesn't mean theirs did, and vice versa. So knowing that super funds have investment options and understanding what your investment option is really important. And as a financial advisor, we talk to our clients about this all the time, about investment options and why we've recommended a particular investment option and why we haven't recommended that one. And we discuss with our clients the difference between passive and active investing. We talk about fees, the pros and cons of active versus passive investing, and the different types of investment options. And, these are things I'd love to get into on another episode. But essentially, the point I'm trying to make is that there are different characteristics to investment options. And more importantly, each person has their own needs and has their own goals. For example, somebody that's in their 20s that has $20,000 in super should most likely invest their money completely different to somebody that's 60 years old and has $500,000 in super. Obviously, that's a very blanket statement. There might be two people that do have their money invested the same way on those two spectrums. But the point I'm trying to make is that a person's goals, their individual circumstances, is really important to take into account as a financial advisor. This is when we're talking to them. And it's really important for us to understand what they have at the moment and what may be or may not be suitable for them. And so when you are talking to friends and family and looking at these big headlines in the news and, saying, oh, wow, look at this super fund. It's one of, it's in the top 2 or top 3 worst performing funds. Do understand, first of all, it is important to contact your financial advisor or your super fund to see if you are in one of those options. Because, I'm not saying not to take this report seriously. That's, these figures, I'm not saying not to take them seriously. So do contact your super fund or your financial advisor, but just keep an open mind and confirm and check whether you are actually in that option or not as well. Or whether that fund is, a fund that you want to potentially switch your super to, whether that's an option that you're going to be in or not as well. Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.